Greg, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. This has been a conversation that is long overdue. I've been dying to get you on here because,
Yeah.
you know, cookies is a topic that has been coming up more and more. And
hmm
I really feel like we should just unpack what this major shift is going to mean for our audience. So let's go ahead and get checked in and just kick things right off. Can you start by just level setting with me here? What are cookies
Yes. Besides delicious treats.
besides
Um,
absolutely delicious treats?
yeah, sure. So a cookie is an individual, it's like an ID tracker. And so there are different types of cookies. There's first party cookies that they're generated by a website that you're on. This is like the login information that you have or
Mm-hmm.
user preferences. A good example of this is like how a shopping cart happens. You can add something to the shopping cart, navigate through an entire website, and continue to add on that over time. Um, there are third party cookies, which are generated by a domain other than the one that you're on. And so this tracks user behavior across multiple websites. So we've all had that experience where you're looking at something and then hours later, you're reading a news article and you'll see that item in an ad and
Yep. Mm-hmm.
you're like, was I looking at that before? Or was I just like thinking about it? Oftentimes it feels like you're just thinking about it. And there's actually there's a second party. It's really second party data. And the only reason I'll define it is because it's relevant to events. It's that situation when, as an attendee, or if you're RSVPing for an event and you check that
Mm-hmm.
box that says, I agree to have my information shared with the participating sponsors. From the
Mm-hmm.
sponsors' perspective, that's a second party avenue to collect data. So first party and third party, those are the big ones from a cookie standpoint, though.
Right. Okay. So that's a really helpful breakdown because personally I've been hearing like zero party, first party, second party, third
Sure, yeah.
party, and I'm just like, where are all the parties? I want to go to a party with cookies, and I am confused as to how this should apply to my marketing strategy. But
Yeah,
so can we dive a little bit deeper? When we say cookies are going away,
yeah,
what does that mean exactly?
yeah.
What does
So
that
when
mean? What
people
are the implications?
Sure. So when people talk about cookies going away, what they're really talking about is third party cookies. And
Okay.
so these are, and actually, to be really specific, a lot of these have been blocked by most browsers already. So Safari, Mozilla, um, this has already been done. So we're actually talking about Google announcing that for its Chrome browser, they're going to be following suit and retiring cookies by the end of 2023. And this is
Ooh.
a massive deal because Google Chrome is responsible for about 2/3 of all internet usage,
Wow.
which is pretty amazing. I think of them as the splash of browsers.
I love that. I see what you did there. Okay, so the end is nigh, right? For
Yeah.
third party cookies.
hmm
Google and as you said, this has already started,
Yeah,
but it's really kind of coming to a head at the end of this year with Google Chrome following suit
that's right.
or
And
Google
so
following suit.
that's right. And so here it's a big deal because the third party cookies and this information is actually pretty valuable. So um, there are four main ways in which this is currently being used that you'll have to like think about pretty seriously. Um,
Okay.
Number one, audience targeting. And so as this information is tracking user behavior across websites, you start to build a detailed profile of user interest and
Mhm.
preferences. And so
Mhm.
let's say you are a premium diaper brand, which is relevant to me because of my twins.
Right.
um,
Shout out to
uh,
Sage and Rex.
Shout out to Sage and Rex. We're a premium diaper brand. We're looking for couples in their early to mid 30s that have X amount of income, that are have recently moved to San Francisco or are thinking about moving to San Francisco. And you can acquire that data and put ads in front of them that you know are going to be high performing. That's very, very specific and targeted. It's
Right.
also used for measurement and attribution. So when you get a purchase, um, you want to know not just where that person was right before they landed on your page to make a purchase, but their entire journey. It's really, really difficult information to understand and so powerful. Uh, Third, personalization, specifically ad personalization. So as we know, and what we do in events, more so now than ever, personalization is critical. And so it's actually one of the reasons why, not to get ahead of ourselves, but events are so powerful, is that you can't not they're so intimate, and that it's the exact personalized experience. With advertising, it's not that easy. So with this third party data, you have that more holistic picture, and you can really, really personalize to exactly where that person is. And finally, you can kind of do that more holistically across your customer base. That what does your customer base look like, and how can we use that to inform product roadmap and marketing strategy? And, and so with the end of third party data, it'll have a significant impact on how you approach all four of these things. You'll need to rethink audience targeting, measurement, personalization, all of it.
Wow. Okay. So third party cookies have been a major player in the marketing mix, is what you're
Sure.
telling me. And
Yes.
and to prepare for this shift, we're going to have to re-examine all of these four buckets of
Yeah.
impact, basically, that you just broke down for us. Okay, so I gotta be honest, Greg, you're making me a little bit nervous already about my ability to reach my audience and really attribute where revenue impact is coming from. And I'm just asking you for your advice. Like, what can I do about this? What's your advice for me and other marketers like me who are in this boat and kind of feeling just a little bit maybe overwhelmed
Yeah.
um, with this major change we're gonna have to make in our strategy.
Sure. Well, first of all, you should be nervous. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no.
The good news is, we've been here. We've all been here before. So prior to the rise of third party data, which is relatively recent, 10, 15 years or so.
Hmm.
um, uh, First party data and first party marketing strategies and tactics to acquire that data was how you used to operate. And so first party data, just to define that, is information that you earn directly from an individual. And so you might collect that from downloading, here's a form completion to download a piece of content, or
Hmm.
to for someone signing up and becoming a user, or an RSVP on an RSVP form. So brands right now, especially brands who rely heavily on third party data, are going to have to start organizing a lot of their marketing strategies and product strategies around building out this first party data. And a quick reflection on this transition as a whole, like, to me, this is a good thing. These are
Hmm.
these are the same
Why?
the Refine Labs folks, right? And what
Obsessed. Yes.
obsessed, right?
Big fans. Yeah.
And what Chris Walker talks about, I think that these are a lot of the same dynamics that are at play as the buying process gets more complex in general. That this attribution data is becoming less and less accurate, more
Mm,
generally speaking. And
yeah.
so we've seen it ourselves here at Splash, since we've added the open field, how did you hear about us? You'll see where the actual attribution has come from, and then the form field
Hmm.
that's like, oh, from my community group with other marketing leaders, someone said you can't live without Splash, and
Right.
so here I am. And so
Right.
what they talk about is a lot is like, building out community, creating value, operating like a media entity, leaning into dark social partnerships and referrals. So a lot of the companies that will win here are the ones who are designing experiences that deliver a ton of value to their
Mm.
community. And honestly, like, I'm here for it. Like the ones who aren't, uh, that are going to operate in more of like an impersonal way. Can I buy this data and acquire revenue out of it? They're going to struggle big time.
Yeah. So you said a buzzword for me, Greg,
Yeah,
experiences, and
yeah,
you mentioned RSVPs. So naturally, my mind is going to the question of like the role that events will play in all of this, and or can
hmm,
play or should play. Talk to me about your take on that.
yeah, awesome. So events have historically always been a massive part of first party marketing strategies and first
Hmm.
party data. And in fact, I don't think it's unfair to say that it might be the best way to earn this information.
Yeah.
Designing intimate, meaningful, personalized experiences. It's one of the biggest hooks for someone to say, I'm going to volunteer some information of mine at
Hmm.
registration in order to get access to this, while they're participating in it, how they think it went afterwards.
Hmm.
And there's just, we'll get into it, but there are a lot of different ways that people are operating around creating that value where you can learn more and build those relationships.
Yeah. I love the way that you kind of talk about them volunteering that personal data to
Yeah.
you or to your brand, and it makes me think about, you know well, now my mind is turning and I'm like, how can we maybe how can we use events to, one, build that trust so that they want to give that personal data,
Yeah.
building the trust, building the relationship. And how do we, maybe this is a question we circle back to later in our conversation, but how do we, if this is not a major part of your strategy today, right? What can you do as a marketer to start to pave the way for your audience to feel comfortable registering for your event, sharing that data? But before we get there, I'm curious, Greg, what do you see people doing that really stands out in terms of using events for first party data and
Yeah.
to collect that data from their audience?
Yeah. I mean, we're both privileged to see some of the best brands in the world operate in this regard. So there are a couple different highlights that I think a lot of people can learn from.
Hmm.
Um, the companies and the organizations and teams that are doing this really well. First, I see them designing events for each part of the customer journey. So they
Mm,
have event playbooks and program mixes aligned with very intentional experiences. So if you're trying to attack net new leads, you might think of an event, at or around an industry conference or trade show. If you're trying to accelerate a close, especially in this complex buying process that exists now, you might organize the buying committee for a strategic account at a single dinner or at like a strategy workshop. So
yeah.
with with all of with these very relevant and personalized experiences, not only are you going to get better attendance at these events, but you'll get to learn very, very specific pieces of information about the attendees at those events. So
Mm,
tying that back to first party data, when you do, we call these everyday events, like a Splash, right? So there's
yep.
the concept, there's like the massive conference, and then there's everything else.
Right.
And when you do, when you actually own and look at the everything else events, you get to earn data over time. You don't need to rely on saying, here's, let's like fill out this form of like everything in the world that we're trying
Mm,
to learn about
mhm,
you. You can
mhm.
say top of the funnel, we're just getting to know each other. Like here's just a little piece of information that
Yeah.
that that we need. And then like as you figure out that you want to attend more experiences by us because you're going to go further down the funnel with us as we build a relationship, you can learn a little bit more, right? How did they learn about us? What's important to them? What career aspirations do they have? Right? And
Mhm.
those are all things that you can start to gather. um, I call it, I think 10 years ago, it's like progressive profiling. I like to think of it as more of like progressive understanding of
Mm,
individuals. And
love that.
I I think there are definitely some organizations that I'm envious of. I think of our work that we've done with some like beverage alcohol uh, companies in the past, where it's like something like a Macallan whiskey tasting, and
Mhm.
and they'll have the demand is so crazy that they'll have like 45 questions, and it'll be like sold out in like seconds. And I'm like, what luxury to be able to collect all of that information to get. For
Right.
the rest of us, we need to earn it over time. So if you don't have that level of demand, then you have to earn it. So
I
go
love
ahead,
that
please.
how you're talking about the earning, earning this data from your audience. I love how you brought up even being able to use this data that you are collecting over time or earning over time to improve your attendance rates. This is something, Greg, that has just been coming up again and again and again from our community, is this big question of, how can we improve attendance rates? It's a big gnarly thorn for a lot of marketers these days. And so I love that we're kind of bringing that conversation of improving or influencing attendance into this conversation of, not only the importance of using events to collect that data from your audience, but the concept of using your everyday events, your programs at scale to earn that data over time, and to deepen, your understanding of your audience, your
Yeah.
potential buyers and consumers, um, to then inform your marketing strategy, your event strategy in a more meaningful way. It's really, you're kind of just like putting the puzzle pieces together for me, and illuminating things in a new way. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm curious if you have, first of all, other examples of,
Yeah.
stand
Few more.
out. Okay, go. Let's have at it. I'm because now you've got the wheels turning, Greg, and I'm like, okay, cool. If my wheels are turning, I'm sure that our
Yeah.
listeners are also starting to understand how they can incorporate these ideas, these concepts into their own strategy as well.
Yeah. So I mean, there is none of that matters. None of that progressive understanding matters if you're not ultimately aggregating that information in one place. And so if this
Hmm.
information lives in silos, which often it does as people get started, building out their process in spreadsheets, then it's such a miss, because this is how many times have you seen such valuable information just live in a spreadsheet somewhere? And
Yep.
I think actually, you know, Splash, I think we're fortunate enough to have competitors in a lot of the opportunities that we go up against. It's like validates the market and the problem, and we're all kind of pushing each other from an innovation standpoint. But far and away, what we see the most is people operating in spreadsheets or with homegrown systems, or
Hmm.
trying to take their marketing automation system and like Frankenstein it into an event marketing
Yeah.
technology. And I think the intention is there, it's already integrated. You will get the benefit of saying this is coming from an event, or this person attended this campaign, which is marked as an event. But to your point around attendance, I think it really shows up here, because I think when you do it in that manner, you kind of treat an event. It's like the RSVP form is like where the event starts and stops, and that's it. You're trying to
Mhm.
treat it as like an ebook download, and really, we know that there's so much more to that. And if you're asking everyone the same questions that you would on any other field across the rest of the experience, it's just not personalized enough
Right.
for them. So you have to collect the right information, and you have to ask the right questions that really get people excited about wanting to attend, and then um, make sure that that's integrated into your stack. And
Mhm.
when you have that, then you can design a playbook around it. And so you take that and you can say, okay, where along the customer journey, what are the types of events that we're going to run? What are the questions and the information that we want to get? What's the value we're trying to deliver? Let's map that out and create playbooks around it. Um, and we see a lot of our customers just like really templatize this all the way down to the email sequence, to the confirmations that happen, to what gets sent to them if they didn't show up but they said they were going to
Mhm.
if they did and actually came, like the here's what you missed versus like thank you for sharing this time with us. And a personal favorite of mine here is what booking.com does for their partner
What do they do?
program. They have this incredible part. So everything at booking, like a client is someone who, a partner for them is someone who lists on booking.com.
Right.
And so the partner team has to do marketing and education at a hyper localized level.
Mm.
And so they build out these playbooks, and they have the same like framework of a playbook that is being delivered at complete opposite ends of the globe, but in local languages, with all in local personalization, yet with very compliant branding and design, and the
Mhm.
data all still flowing through to one place. So
Wow.
it's that macro level view on the data compliance and collecting the
Mhm.
right data and earning that first party data, but then delivering that localized personal experience at that level. Extremely, it's difficult to pull off without the right tools and strategy in place.
All right, Greg. So it's been very helpful for me and really illuminating to hear from you kind of like what's been going well and how some companies are able to and marketers are able to really stand out using events for that kind of long-term first party data collection, earning that over time, as we've said. And the planner in me is anticipating and then wondering rather what I should be anticipating for obstacles. And I
Yeah,
would love to give a heads up to the other marketers who are tuned in today. What are some of the biggest obstacles for organizations looking to prioritize the collection, the earning of this first party data through events from your perspective?
sure. Well, first and foremost, shameless plug, not having the right event technology. straight
Right.
straight out the gate. Uh, I mean, seriously, though, like a lot of the things, all of those things that we described, where we're seeing people just really like rise to the occasion here with this.
Hmm.
You need something to be able to not only create that personalized experience, but then templatize it. You need something that can create that playbook. and
Yes.
and so it's not only just like delivering the value. That's obviously like a big component of it, but to be able to templatize it and scale it is the way that you're going to get that consistency in data collection over time, right? The
Mm.
progressive understanding of who your customers are, and then the ability to actually look at that all together and say, here's how we understand our customers, and here's where they're coming from, here's what we've learned about them, and here's how we can inform our marketing and product roadmap accordingly. So
Yeah.
uh, that's number one, first and foremost. Number two, not having it integrated with your tech stack. We've I think during the pandemic we've seen dozens, if not hundreds, of different event technologies come to
Mhm.
life. And I think, I say that innovation in our space accelerated by probably a decade. during that
Yes.
period. It was just so crazy. But integrating into a sales and marketing technology stack at within an enterprise organization is not easy. It's something that we've been working on since day one. I think it was Spotify who we originally did it with back in 2012 with
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce, and being able to say, hey, this information doesn't belong only in Splash. You can use it here, but really you need to put it into your CRM. That's where you're going to action it. And that's where you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to measure the proper ROI. And so if you're not
Mm-hmm.
doing that, you're really missing out here. It's a big obstacle. Number three, uh, part of the strategy. We talked about the everyday events versus like those larger behemoth conferences or trade shows, and putting all of your
Mm-hmm.
eggs in one basket. Unless you have the draw of a premium whiskey tasting and the ability to fill out 45 pieces of information to get someone to show up, you need to learn about them over time. And so do that strategically with the event types that you're putting together,
Yeah.
the small ones that are placed along your customer journey, with specific goals at each point. And finally, um, not news to anyone here, but the fact that we're all receiving a lot of pressure from the economic situation
Yes.
that we're all facing, and being put in a situation where we just need to do more with less is a massive obstacle. And there's a chicken or egg scenario that everyone is presented with, where
Mm-hmm.
all of the buying decisions are going all the way up to the CFO, and she or he
Right.
is saying, I won't sign off on this investment unless you have a forecasted ROI. And really, you can't build a forecasted ROI without having the right technology in place to do it with you. Uh, in the first place. And so that's something that we're being really empathetic with when we're talking to people and saying, we understand this is a situation. It's our goal to make sure that you have you're able to get a framework in place where you can start to develop that program,
Mm-hmm.
and then build the business case to help scale it over time. Um, but yeah, it is not easy right now with the combination. There's some things you can do, but um, but it's not easy.
Yeah. I really appreciate how you kind of broke down those major obstacles, and I was going to actually ask you to circle back to the first one and dig in a little bit more, and then
Yeah,
and kind of talking through that last big challenge of not potentially not being able to, you know, prove, forecasted ROI without having this all built out already, and to your point, having the right tech stack. My question was going to be, what are some of the risks, additional kind of like maybe hidden risks, um, attached to some of these obstacles, with not having the right tech stack, or more tech stack. I also had a question pop up of, when it comes to, the strategy, really, you kind of um, are helping me put all these puzzle pieces together. But I guess what I'm
hmm
trying to ask is, you know, what do you see as the biggest implications of not solving for these obstacles, in the coming, the rest of this year, as we think about, the end of, third party cookies, but also kind of the future of marketing, the future of how we're going to be able to, speak to a global audience using the right messaging, having the right data to target them.
yeah,
I'm just wondering if you're kind of seeing like bigger business risks or implications, I guess, to not getting ahead of some of these obstacles.
yeah, totally. I mean, probably the biggest is you're going to miss your revenue targets, and your budgets are going to be cut.
Mm,
And
okay, those are
we
big risks. Casual.
so I mean, but seriously though, I think, if you are if you're not able to measure the impact of the experiences you're creating, there's just no way that you're going to command more budget, and the dominant budget is going to continue to go to ad spend. And the reason it
Yeah.
does is because it's so predictable. But when cookie starts to go away and you can be less reliant on that, then you're going to be scrambling because we're going to
Yeah.
say, oh, we probably can't swear on this, but oh darn,
We could go
oh,
PG-13.
oh darn, we're this isn't as effective, and it's already happening. This isn't as effective as it used to be, and we need to look elsewhere. But we don't have the infrastructure set up to do so because we were never building out the business case and saying, look at how much this is working. We need more budget. We need to
Right.
command the more resources and the ability to make this a more dominant part of our marketing strategy. So
Yeah.
I think you know this is the way that relationships are. It's the beautiful aspect of this transition. We're going to live in a world where brands have to have a relationship with their customers, and they
Mhm.
have to create value, and a lot of that from the customer standpoint, us in consumer standpoint, is saying I want that to be experiential, and I would prefer an experience over something else that you might just be able to hand me in exchange for my information. I would rather
Mhm.
have this experience, and those who can do that and can do that on a, like you mentioned, globally, those who can do it on a hyper local level are the ones that are going to stand out significantly
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Well said. And thank you for just very clearly painting the picture of how all of these pieces come together to either, bring you to the promised land of success for your business or potentially have you in a really tough spot. So I'm wondering, Greg, if we should transition now into some actionable um, insights and kind of advice,
Yeah.
directives that you would give to marketers to really prime themselves to not just be able to get through this transition successfully, but set themselves up for that long term business growth? What would you
Yeah.
say are kind of the top things they should be thinking about and planning for?
Okay, great. So, first and foremost, I think trust that events work. And we've been, Splash in a lot of ways has become as successful as it has because we caught this pendulum of like, we always knew this thing was working. It was such a powerful way to do it. Now can
Yeah.
we actually measure the how effective it is? And when you started
Hmm.
being able to, like we were introducing, it's like, whoa, that it's even more effective than what we were thinking it was. And so I think stand on that confidence and say, we need to do more events here. And I think depending on where you're at, starting with, put that focus on small events, and then
Yes.
and shifting some of your budget away from some of the more dominant aspects of the marketing. I know Emily from our team will probably listen to this, so sorry, Emily, but shifting budget away from ad spend, it's like so massive, just a little, and say we need to start now. Remember, this is at the end
Hmm.
of 2023. At the time of this recording, it's April 3rd,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you have to start now to do it, to build those playbooks, to get it integrated, right? And to develop this like, here's what the business case looks like, especially because there's a long tail of when those opportunities actually end up converting and turning into revenue. If
Hmm.
you don't, kind of two sub bullets here, if you don't have a program, um, well, let's start with the first one. If you have a program running already, like, good. Just like add more emphasis to it,
Yeah.
and kind of trust that this is eventually going to be one of the biggest uh, aspects of and sources of first party data for you. So now it's focusing on the playbooks and the specific program mixes that accomplish your goals at each aspect of the customer journey. Progressive understanding. If
Yep.
you don't have a program running yet, start small. Look at your markets where you have a high concentration of customers and presumably prospects, or look at an industry conference or trade show and do a dinner. Get a private room. Um, Check out what Sam Jacobs from Pavilion kind of wrote about doing a thought leadership dinner is like 14 kind of bullet points on how to do this super effectively. Check
Mm-hmm.
out what you, Camille, have been able to build here at Splash with the Magic Spark dinner series. And for anyone listening who just doesn't know about this, private dining rooms, 10, 15 people, sometimes a little bit more, single conversation happening, often a mix between prospects and customers, where we are talking about challenges. They are talking about challenges that they're facing, insights that they're seeing, and sharing communication and kind of helping everyone kind of level up. And uh, we have the ability to, everyone has the ability to do something like that.
Right.
It is very, very accessible
Mm-hmm.
if you it if you can. I mean, you can speak to this better than me, but like if you get it to a point where you start to build it out as a playbook, you can do these things very, very, very efficiently, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Preach. I
Great.
mean, I am the queen of can we rinse and repeat and can we scale? And I was just saying this actually at a recent Magic Spark dinner that we hosted in Las Vegas. You know, uh, as marketers, we have to ruthlessly prioritize what's working and stop doing what's no longer working. So I'm glad we're talking about these actionable steps people can take to start to leverage events to collect that first party data, because we know that third party data collection is not really going to work for us the way that it has been working. And when it comes to events, the smaller, honestly, the better in a lot of cases. And we have successfully been able to create that internal playbook where it takes us an hour to spin up a new Magic Spark dinner if we choose to, if we need to. And Greg, your
Yeah.
other piece of advice I love, anyone who has either attended a Magic Spark dinner or has spoken with me recently, I love to talk about the formula of finding, like, where are your customers and buyers going to be and going to meet them there. Whether that's they're attending a larger trade show or conference and you're going to host a small dinner to capitalize on that. There's just so much upside in that, and it's also budget friendly. When we talk about, Greg, how do we kind of like forecast that ROI? It's a lot easier to get buy-in from your CFO as a marketer, or your CEO or your CMO on, hey, I want to do a small dinner, kind of positioning it as an experiment. If you can do it well 1, 2, 3 times, then you really have the data that you need to prove the business case as to why this should be a global program. But starting small is just so much easier to prove the ROI versus starting with big. Like, I would not say go out and, if you don't really have an event strategy right now, I would not advise that you start out with a big flagship kind of tent pole, big
Yeah.
budget, kind of event, because you're probably not going to see the ROI initially that you would need to see to then prove that you should be given the budget to do that again and to scale it. So I wholeheartedly want to second everything that you just said, Greg. Um, we talked about the data. I mean, obviously, this is all about data, right?
Hmm.
Earning the data, collecting the data, but then being able to take action on the data. Talk to me more about what you see as like, ways for people to get started in terms of centralizing
Sure.
that data so that they can take action on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the second thing is I think I think using an event marketing technology or platform, like us, I think it's important, and we try and make this stuff really accessible. There's a free tool that we have, like, where you can start to build out an event and start seeing what goes into it. um, it's just a one-on-one level recommendation to have something that you are starting to build that then becomes the playbook that you kind of stand upon, and then make sure that that is as integrated into your stack for attribution, for repeatable experience, and especially compliance. So I think that's just like an easy one to action. And this third one is one of the most fun, I think. Uh, I call it I call it capturing rogue events.
Ooh, I like
um,
that
but but
terminology.
I'll I'll define it. So we just talked about those dinners and these
Hmm.
small events, these everyday events that are like a really good place to start. But like, what if I told you that they're already happening within your business? And almost every gasp, almost every company that I talk to, it's like, but they're looked upon in a very negative way. It's like rogue is like the negative connotation of this thing
Hmm.
that is an opportunity to be flipped. And so it's always like, oh, our salespeople are doing these dinners, and it's like, oh, they set up their own land, they use X tool to just this, and it's not integrated, and or they're just using it via, like, just sending it out via email. The customer success managers are like, just building, like, having like a thought leader, or like a lunch and learn workshop. I can't believe it. Partner managers are getting a partner in a room and doing a breakfast, and you have to like stop and say, like, holy shit. they what an opportunity to take all of this momentum and these super ambitious people that are on your team, just like championing your brand and saying, hey, rather than like trying to knock it down and slap someone on the back of the hand and say, like, you're going rogue, like, we hate that,
Hmm.
you're going rogue. Let's say, actually, can we take this, and can we put it on ourselves from the marketing standpoint, and say, here's a playbook and here's a set of tools where you could do this way
Yeah.
more efficiently than you're doing it now, way faster, so that you can get back to selling, or supporting our customers, or supporting our partners, and have it be a way better experience, but then also have that data kind of pulled back in and centralized into your CRM. And so there's a really good example of this. This wasn't as rogue as the situations I was just describing.
Hmm.
This was very more, it was a lot more strategic and calculated. But Salesforce, as an example, knew they really encouraged a lot of these events to be happening by their team members. And
Hmm.
but the reality is that for these events, to do it on your own, when you have, even, God, even more than 10 attendees, to kind of send out all the invitations, the reminders, the day of, the post event, just on your own, as like throughout your, using your own kind of email, or kind of LinkedIn messages, is a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
um, but to do anything less than like 200 attendees, and get it on marketing operations, and get in your email team, and just kind of creating the content around it, and creating the list, and kind of procuring, it's like there's this like there's like this no man's land that
Hmm.
exists, more than five and less than 200, where it's like so annoying that I don't want to do it, and like too small to actually put a lot of resources against it. It's like, it is a it's like why WeWork exists in real estate, right? This is like but that if you can lean into that, like what Salesforce did. They said we can lean into this and we can kind of empower teams with the technology and make sure that everything is GDPR compliant. When an
Yep.
unsubscribe happens anywhere else in the world, it automatically flows back through into, for them, Splash, where that particular person who is going to send out an invitation to an upcoming, whatever they're trying to accomplish on their own, um, they can do it. They can do it super effectively. So this, and I think this is just like a philosophy that extends even beyond. I'm describing sales, customer success managers, partner managers, but this is
Mm-hmm.
like your ambitious community members that are trying to make a name for themselves because of all of the expertise that they've built through your technology. Lean into it. Let them
Right.
let them shine here.
Yeah.
Just do it in a way that makes sure that you're covered from a compliance standpoint, and that strategically, right, you get that data and you pull that into your CRM. You're just going to watch that thing blossom, and you'll have a way better picture of who your customer is and what they want to engage with. That's going to inform marketing and product and just your strategy as a whole. that that's a it is a untapped gold mine that I
Yeah.
just don't see enough people taking advantage of.
Massive opportunity there, Greg. I love how you broke that down and kind of, reframe. I was going to say flip the script, but you're just reframing how we're thinking about these, so-called rogue events and how they could be actual, opportunities for business growth, for amplifying your brand, but staying compliant and maybe most importantly, especially given the conversation we're here to have, still collecting that data that you need. So, Greg, I feel like you
Yeah.
said it a little bit, but just to drive this point home, when do we start? Like, when do we start putting these things into motion? Because you mentioned, like it's getting your organization. I was actually just having a talk recently. I feel like I need to do a whole other podcast episode on like how to crack the marketing ops nut that like, the marketing ops teams that are like, we've got the lock on the tech stack and nothing is breaking through.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
want to acknowledge that as like also another challenge I've been hearing from my peers who are trying to bring on solutions like Splash to make their lives easier, to be able to do more with less, and to be able to start to seamlessly collect this first party data. But it takes time to get that buy-in,
Yep.
and also it takes time to just like kind of rethink through your marketing strategy and your event strategy. I think about like, are you what custom questions are you putting in your registration form? How are you using post event feedback surveys to collect even more data? You talked about collecting data during the live event, but it's going to take some thought to actually put all of these things into practice. So when do we start really prioritizing this?
Yeah. Well, the answer is now. uh, because if you have it, you're too late. You're not too late, but you are late. But well,
Okay.
so first of all, I think that the marketing operations, the MOPS uh, talking point is interesting. Like they have a really difficult gig, right?
They do.
And actually, I oof, that is a tough gig. Always under resourced. It's similar to our audience, right? In field
Yeah.
and event marketing, it's like behemoth Herculean projects
Hmm.
and like constantly trying to like fight for resource and just justification and then under resources to begin with. They're like our comrades and
Yeah.
on the marketing team. Uh,
Yeah.
but
For
I
sure.
think I think that there's like there's an interesting path there, especially when it comes to what I was just describing with the rogue event. That's like if you can paint the picture of this is a freight train that is happening whether we're on it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just in our best interest to take all of this momentum and this action that's happening outside of us and pull it into our sphere. And like, here's what it would take to do so. I think is a good way to at least try. It's like
Yeah.
a, you don't have to set up anything. It's happening already. You just have to capture it in a
Mm-hmm.
way. So I I think that's stuff you can start doing now. All of those things. You can start identifying events that are already happening and starts to say, here's a better way for me to enable you to do so, and strategically start to collect that information because you kind of put the resources and tools in place to kind of funnel that data your way.
Yeah.
And it's like, do a dinner, right? Find a market, do a dinner, just watch the magic. It's called Magic Spark for a reason. Watch what happens, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that's if you finish this podcast with nothing else, I think those two kind of directives are a really good starting point. Um, Greg, any other closing thoughts before we wrap up this discussion today? And by the way, thank you so much because as I've said, this has been really I learned so much through this conversation and I appreciate your take on all of these things.
Thanks, Emil. Well, you're a good thought partner, and I enjoy conversations always. I'd say I've said this a couple times. I'll reiterate it here. Like this is a challenge. Yes, this is ultimately a good thing
Yeah.
to watch the pendulum swing away from impersonal programmatic third party tracking, that very like creepy, like, oh, was I thinking that? And now it's now it's just like right in front of my face, back into this direction of respect, consent, trust,
Mm-hmm.
uh is an amazing, it's just like it's the right thing to happen. And
Yeah.
Splash, since our inception, has been focusing has been focused on helping brands build relationships directly with their
Right.
customers. We weren't thinking like, oh, they're probably going to not have access to third party data in 11 years from now. But it was like, this is the most meaningful way to actually do this, to market, is to actually build a genuine relationship and to create experiences where serendipity happens between attendees that, now 5 years later have kind of leveled up, exponentially in their careers because of that interaction. Um,
Yeah.
we've been doing that since day one, and so if anyone out there is thinking like this is a daunting challenge for us to overcome, we're not quite sure how or where to get started. I think that I know that we're perfectly positioned to help marketing teams through this transition. And I
Yeah.
just get really excited about it because it's like our expertise, and it's just like the most beautiful transition for for marketing to kind of be forced into. And everyone's going to benefit, obviously, like as I'm saying us, but the brands themselves kind of growing this way, in this respectable way, and then obviously their customers and consumers globally having, their say in this, and who they choose to build relationships with.
So well said, Greg. And thank you for, not being all doom and gloom about this. I totally agree. I think it's an exciting time. Certainly for event marketers. I've been having so many conversations over the last 6 months or so, just about how even the role of the event marketer has truly evolved. We are essential to business growth. And it's really wonderful to see that there's other factors at play that are also allowing for this continued evolution of the role and the importance of events and event marketers in um, generating revenue and growing businesses. So, what a great conversation, Greg. Thank you so much. You've dropped so many gems. I am sure that anyone who's tuned in is going to walk away feeling more inspired than overwhelmed, which I think is, if we can do that for our listeners, for our community members, I think we're in good shape. So want to thank you for that. Probably will have to bring you back on. Definitely. Oh, we got to bring you back on to talk about this, like the top of next year, top of
Yeah.
2024. Like, once it's official, we should, we'll keep our eyes and ears and feelers out there open, to just hear how our community is faring with this shift, with this transition. But Greg, thank you so much for today. And to everyone who has tuned into this episode, thank you. And until next time, take care.
Thank you.